She was led to the altar like someone pushed into silence. Humiliated, rejected, and returned to her family still in her wedding dress, she disappeared in the early morning hours without leaving a trace. Days later, she was found by an Apache, Manka, and from that moment everything began to change. Watch until the end and discover how a woman's silent strength became a symbol of dignity. Subscribe to the channel and learn the story that transformed pain into rebirth. The dress sewn by Vittoria had visible flaws in the side seams, the result of trembling hands and a heart that never wanted this marriage. At 18, in the backlands of Pernambuco, women didn't choose their destiny. They accepted what life offered with resignation. For the youngest daughter of Su Antonio and Donna Maria, farmers of a small property on the outskirts of Caruaru, destiny had a name and surname: Geronimo Bezerra, a 52-year-old landowner, twice widowed, who owned the lands bordering her family's property. While her aunts adjusted the improvised veil, whispers cut through the hot afternoon air like sharpened knives. She should thank God that a man like Geronimo wants a girl without a dowry, whispered Aunt Josefa. For they say his first wife died because she didn't know how to take proper care of him, replied another voice that Vittoria pretended not to recognize. The parish priest of São Sebastião waited impatiently. It was the third time he had officiated a wedding for Geronimo, and this time there wasn't even time for the proper banns. The groom arrived late, exuding the sweet and sour smell of cachaça. His small eyes traveled over Vittoria's body like someone evaluating a mare before purchase, and a crooked smile revealed teeth yellowed by tobacco. The ceremony was brief, words exchanged without emotion, hands joined without warmth. Donna Maria cried silently in the first pew, not from emotion, but from a fear that only mothers know when they hand over daughters to men of dubious reputation. Su Antonio kept his gaze fixed on the stone floor of the church, as if seeking some justification for the deal he had just sealed. His daughter's hand in exchange for the promise that his lands would not be taken in the next drought. The improvised celebration in the yard of Vittoria's parents' house, the groom drank more than he spoke. When the shadows of night began to lengthen, it was time for the couple to leave for Geronimo's farm. The carriage waited, decorated with wildflowers that were already wilting in the heat. Vittoria hugged her mother tightly, feeling that this would be the last embrace for a long time. Her younger brother Tiago, only 8 years old, clung to her skirts, crying without understanding why his sister had to leave. That was when Geronimo, impatient, pulled her by the arm with excessive force. "Enough crying, woman. Now you belong to me." The journey to the farm took less than an hour, but to Vittoria it seemed like an eternity. The silence was broken only by the noise of the wheels on the dirt road and by the occasional swig of cachaça that Geronimo took from his flask. The farm was larger than Vittoria had imagined, with a 2-story main house that rose imposingly against the starry sky. But instead of the main entrance, Geronimo drove the carriage to the back where the servants' quarters were located. "You'll sleep here tonight," he said, pointing to a small room with a straw bed. "I need to see if you're worth what your father promised." Geronimo's gaze changed, becoming cold as a knife blade. He gripped Vittoria's chin firmly. "I heard you've been offering yourself to Colonel Mendonça's son. Is that true?" Vittoria felt her blood freeze in her veins. "No, sir, I never did that." Geronimo laughed, a laugh that had no joy. "Liar, I thought I was buying a decent girl, but they brought me used merchandise." He pushed her into the room. "Early tomorrow, you'll go back to your father's house. I don't want a woman who's been with other men." The door slammed shut, and the sound of the key turning in the lock confirmed that Vittoria was trapped. She collapsed onto the bed, tears finally escaping, dampening the white dress that had cost so many hours of work. It wasn't shame she felt. It was anger. Anger at being treated like merchandise, anger that no one had cared about her wishes, anger at knowing that tomorrow would bring only more humiliation. When the sky began to lighten, Vittoria was already on her feet. The old lock didn't resist much against the hairpin she found on the floor of the room. She knew this type of door well, identical to those in her childhood home. In silence, she crossed the yard, passing by dogs that, surprisingly, didn't bark at her. Perhaps they too recognized a mistreated soul. She wouldn't return home. She couldn't bear her father's look of disappointment, nor the neighbors' whispers. Instead, she walked in the opposite direction, toward the dense forest that marked the end of Geronimo's lands. She knew that beyond that forest was the Fulni-O reservation, indigenous people who bravely resisted the expansion of landowners. She had never been there, had only heard stories, some of respect, many of fear and prejudice. Her feet, still wearing the white slippers from the ceremony, were soon covered in mud and scratched by thorns. The dress tore in several places, but Vittoria didn't care. Each step distanced her from the nightmare of the previous night. When the sun was already high, exhaustion finally overcame her. She leaned against the trunk of a leafy tree and, without realizing it, fell asleep. She was awakened by the gentle touch of a hand on her shoulder. Startled, she opened her eyes and saw before her a middle-aged man, brown skin and long hair tied in a ponytail. His eyes, however, showed no threat. There was in them a silent understanding that Vittoria had never seen before. "Are you lost?" he asked in clear Portuguese, although with a distinct accent. Vittoria hesitated, unsure what to answer. Lost? Yes, she was. Not just in the forest, but in life. "I have nowhere to return to," she finally said, her voice hoarse. "From crying." The man nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. "My name is Ubirajara. I'm a teacher in the Fulni-O village. You seem to need help." He extended his hand, a simple gesture that meant much more than aid to Vittoria. It meant choice. For the first time, someone was offering her an option, not an imposition. "Vittoria," she replied, accepting the outstretched hand and standing up with difficulty. "My name is Vittoria." The Fulni-O village appeared among the trees like a vision from another world, so different from the life Vittoria knew that for a moment she thought she was dreaming. Wattle and daub houses with thatched roofs formed a circle around a central space where children played and women worked on colorful looms. Some curious glances turned to her as Ubirajara guided her with calm steps, but no one asked questions or pointed at her torn dress. There was a dignity in the silence of these people that contrasted brutally with the malicious whispers of her village. "You need to speak with our elder first," Ubirajara explained. "Grandmother Irachima is the one who decides about visitors." He led her to a house slightly larger than the others, decorated with geometric paintings on the exterior walls. Seated on a mat at the entrance, an elderly woman with completely white hair braided with red ribbons observed the movement in the village. Her eyes, framed by deep wrinkles, seemed to see more than the simple appearance of things. Beside her, a girl of approximately 5 years played with small straw dolls. The child had a right arm that ended just below the elbow, a birth defect that didn't seem to affect her joy. "I've brought a visitor, Grandmother Irachima," said Ubirajara, bowing slightly in a sign of respect. The old woman studied Vittoria for long seconds before gesturing for her to approach. "Your heart is bleeding, white girl," she said in slow, careful Portuguese. "You don't need to tell me now. Stories have their own time to be revealed." The small girl next to the elder stood up and without shyness touched Vittoria's torn dress. "Pretty," she said with a smile that revealed baby teeth, "but it's broken. Grandmother Irachima can fix it. She fixes everything that's broken." The elder smiled upon hearing the child's words. "This is Yasi, my granddaughter. She came to me when my son and his wife departed for the spirit world during the Great Fever. Yasi knows how to recognize wounded souls because she herself carries a mark." Vittoria knelt to be at the girl's height and smiled. "Nice to meet you." "Yasi, my name is Vittoria." The child laughed. "Vittoria, strong name. Did you win some war?" Before she could answer, the elder intervened. "She is still fighting her war, little one. Now go fetch fresh water for our guest." When the girl moved away, Grandmother Irachima gestured for Vittoria to sit beside her. "Ubirajara found you in the forest. This is not a coincidence. Our ancestors guide important encounters." The teacher remained standing, respectfully distant to give privacy to the conversation. "I don't know if I can stay," said Vittoria, feeling the tears return. "The man I married yesterday, he will look for me. he will blame my family. The elder took Vittoria's hands between her own, rough from decades of work. Here we have a rule. Those who seek refuge receive protection until the next full moon. After that, they must choose their path. You have time, daughter. That night, Vittoria was accommodated in a small house on the perimeter of the village, normally used for visitors. Yasi insisted on staying with her, bringing her straw dolls and invented stories. The child's presence calmed Vittoria's agitated heart, which had not felt the comfort of innocence for a long time. In the days that followed, the young woman began to learn the rhythm of the village. She woke up with the birds' song and helped with community tasks, fetching water from the nearby river, peeling cassava for preparing flour, carefully observing the older women weaving straw in intricate patterns. No one asked about her past, although everyone seemed to know she carried a painful story. Ubirajara visited her every day, bringing fruits or simply sitting in silence beside her while she learned to work with clay. He was respected in the village, not only for being a teacher but for his quiet wisdom. He was 40 years old, had never married, dedicating his life to teaching children and preserving the Yathay language, the traditional language of the Fulni, that was at risk of disappearing. One afternoon, while Vittoria was helping prepare natural dye extracted from seeds and roots, Ubirajara approached with a small notebook. "Can you read and write?" he asked. When she nodded, he smiled. "I thought so. Your hands hold objects like someone who knows letters." He opened the notebook, showing pages covered with notes. "I'm recording the stories of the elders. It's important they don't get lost." Vittoria ran her fingers over the pages carefully. "In my village, few girls go to school. My father thought it was important for me to learn, even when neighbors said it was a waste of time. It was the only good thing he gave me." Her voice faltered on the last sentence. Ubirajara didn't comment, just closed the notebook delicately. "Perhaps you can help me with this work if you want." It was the first time Vittoria felt she had something valuable to offer, something beyond her body or her capacity for domestic work. On the 5th night of her stay, while everyone gathered around the central fire to hear the stories of the ancients, a commotion at the village entrance interrupted the peace. 3 men from the neighboring village had arrived, demanding to speak with the leaders. Vittoria recognized one of them. It was Josue, the foreman from Geronimo's farm. Her heart raced, and she instinctively held Hasi closer, as if the child's presence could protect her. Grandmother Irasima and 2 older men from the village stepped forward to receive the unwanted visitors. "We're looking for a girl," said Josue, his loud and intimidating voice echoing through the space. "Vittoria, Antonio's daughter. She ran away after abandoning her husband. We know she's hiding here with you Indians." The way he pronounced the last word made his contempt clear. Ubirajara appeared beside Vittoria, subtly placing himself between her and the newcomers. "Stay with Jatsi," he whispered. "Don't let them see you." Grandmother Irasima maintained an erect posture, her eyes fixed on the intruders. "This is Fulnio land. You have no authority here." Josue stepped forward, threatening. "Geronimo Bezerra rules this entire region, old woman. He wants his woman back, and he wants her now, or there will be consequences." One of the village elders said something in the Yathay language, and several younger men positioned themselves strategically around. The message was clear. They were ready to defend their territory. "Tell your boss," replied Grandmother Irasima with a firm voice, "that here we follow laws older than his. Anyone who seeks sanctuary among the Fulnio is under our protection until the next full moon. After that, she will choose her destiny." Josue spat on the ground, a deliberately disrespectful gesture. "You have 3 days. After that, Geronimo will come with more men." The 3 visitors withdrew, leaving behind a tense silence. When they finally disappeared into the darkness, Vittoria emerged from her hiding place, trembling. Yasi clung to her skirt, frightened not by the danger she didn't fully comprehend, but by the change in the village's atmosphere. 3 days, murmured Vittoria. "In 3 days, he will come to get me." Ubirajara approached, his eyes reflecting the firelight. In 3 days you will have to make a choice, Vittoria, but it won't be between returning to him or running away. It will be between continuing to be a victim or becoming the owner of your destiny. The first day after the ultimatum dawned with a fine rain that covered the village with a veil of mist. Vittoria woke with a start, her heart pounding like a frightened bird. Jassy slept peacefully beside her, her small incomplete arm resting on her belly. Careful not to wake the child, Vittoria got up and walked to the cabin door. Outside, despite the rain, life in the village followed its normal rhythm. Women carried baskets of cassava, men repaired the roof of a house damaged by the previous. Night's wind, children ran between puddles. No one seemed concerned about the threat hanging over them all, or perhaps they were just accustomed to living under threats. Ubirajara emerged from the mist, carrying a package wrapped in banana leaves. "I brought your breakfast," he said with a calm smile. "Grandmother Irasima asked you to go to her when you finish eating." Inside the package was still warm beiju flatbread and fresh fruits. Vittoria realized she was hungry despite her anxiety. "Why are you helping me?" she asked between bites. "You barely know me. I'm bringing problems for everyone." Ubirajara sat beside her on the doorstep watching the rain. "My people have already faced many difficulties to maintain our land and our culture. An angry farmer is nothing compared to what we've already endured." He paused, carefully choosing his words. "Besides, we recognize strength when we see it. You have more courage than you imagine, Vittoria." When she finished eating, Vittoria gently woke Hasi. The girl slowly opened her eyes, smiling upon recognizing her new friend. Together they walked to Grandmother Irasema's house, who was waiting for them with a circle of women around her. All were working on a large community loom, creating a fabric with geometric patterns in red, black, and white. "Sir, come join us," invited the elder, indicating an empty space. "Today we begin weaving the sacred mantle for the next full moon ritual." Vittoria sat down shyly. She had never worked with weaving before. A middle-aged woman named Patira smiled encouragingly and showed her how to pass the threads between her fingers. "Each pattern tells a story," explained Patira. "This one represents the river that never dries up, even in the worst droughts. It's a symbol of resistance." As they worked, the women began to sing in Yathe, a soft and hypnotic melody. Vittoria didn't understand the words but felt their power. Her hands, initially clumsy, began finding the right rhythm, guided by the music and the collective movement. JC played nearby, occasionally bringing small flowers to decorate the weaver's hair. In the middle of the afternoon, when the rain finally stopped, Grandmother Irasima asked the other women to withdraw, leaving only her and Vittoria by the loom. "The time has come for you to tell me your story, daughter," said the elder, her kind eyes fixed on the young woman's face. Not out of curiosity, but because stories kept inside are like wounds closed with dirt inside. They never heal properly. Vittoria's words came hesitantly at first, then like a torrent. She told about the arranged marriage, about the malicious whispers, about the humiliation at Geronimo's hands and the abandonment on the first night. She spoke of the desperate escape and the fear of returning home to face shame. When she finished, she felt strangely light, as if she had set down a heavy burden. Grandmother Irasima remained silent for a long moment before speaking. "Among my people, marriage is not a contract or an exchange. It's an alliance between spirits who choose to walk together. No one can force that choice." She took Vittoria's hands in hers. "You did nothing wrong, girl. The shame is not yours. It belongs to those who treated you like merchandise." That night, the village held a purification ritual. In the center of the main clearing, a large bonfire was lit. Around it, the Fulni-Or danced in circles, their bare feet marking rhythms on the moist earth, voices rising in ancestral songs. Vittoria watched, fascinated, when Ubirajara approached. "They are dancing the Torre," he explained. "It's our sacred dance, which connects the world of the living to the world of spirits." He extended his hand. "Come, join us." Vittoria hesitated. "I don't know how to dance this," Ubirajara smiled. "No one knows at the beginning. The body learns what the heart understands." Timidly, she accepted the invitation. Ubirajara guided her to the circle of dancers, placing her between himself and Putira. The steps were simple, but loaded with meaning, feet that touched the earth with reverence, hands that rose to the sky in supplication. Gradually, Vittoria felt part of something greater than herself, as if the dance connected her not only to the Fulni-o, but to an ancestral force she couldn't name. It was during the dance that she saw Hasi in grandmother Irasema's lap, looking at her with admiration. The girl applauded enthusiastically, her small incomplete arm moving with as much grace as the other. In that moment, Vittoria understood something fundamental. Imperfection was not weakness, it was just a different way of being. When the dance ended and everyone sat down to share a communal meal, Ubirajara remained beside Vittoria. There was something different in his gaze, an intensity she hadn't noticed before. "Tomorrow is the second day," he said, his voice low so only she could hear. "What have you decided to do?" Vittoria looked around at the gathered families, at Hasi, who now slept in her grandmother's lap, at the starry sky above them. "I don't want to run anymore," she finally answered. "But I also can't go back to Geronimo or to my family. I'm no longer the same person they knew." Ubirajara nodded slowly. "Among my people, when someone goes through a profound transformation, we say that their spirit has been reborn. The old person departs and a new one takes their place." He paused as if carefully considering his next words. "Vittoria, I would like to ask Grandmother Irasema for permission to court you, as our tradition mandates, not out of pity nor for protection, but because I see in you a woman of courage and dignity, someone with whom I would like to share my life." The declaration caught Vittoria by surprise. In her culture, marriages were arranged, negotiated like contracts. The idea of being courted, of having a choice, was as new as it was frightening. "I don't know what to say," she responded honestly. Ubirajara smiled. "You don't need to answer now, we have time." But time was exactly what they didn't have. The second day dawned with disturbing news. 2 young men who kept watch at the reservation's boundaries returned to the village with grave expressions. Geronimo had gathered more than 20 men, all armed, and was camped less than 2 hours' walk from the village. The 3-day ultimatum had been reduced to 1. "He will come tomorrow at dawn," reported one of the lookouts to the Council of Elders. "He said he will burn the entire village if we don't hand over the woman." The news spread quickly, creating an atmosphere of tension. Some families began to gather their belongings, preparing for a possible evacuation. Others discussed forms of defense. Amid the growing chaos, Grandmother Irasema maintained her calm. She gathered the council in her house, including Ubirajara and, surprisingly, Vittoria. "The threat is real," said the elder, after everyone had settled. "Geronimo Bezerra has influence with politicians and landowners in the region. If there is conflict, we may lose much more than a battle. We may lose our lands." Vittoria felt the weight of each word like stones on her shoulders. "It's my fault," she said, her voice choked. "I should surrender to him before anyone gets hurt." Ubirajara, seated beside her, visibly tensed. "I will not allow that." Grandmother Irasema raised her hand, asking for silence. "No decision will be made out of fear. We have until tomorrow at dawn to find a path that honors both our safety and our dignity." She looked directly at Vittoria. "And you, daughter, are not to blame for the violence of men like Geronimo. They existed before you arrived and will continue to exist if you leave." After the meeting, while the village prepared for a night of vigil, Ubirajara took Vittoria to the bank of the river that cut through the reservation. The sun was setting, tinting the water red and gold. "I have something to show you," he said, leading her along a narrow trail that bordered the waterway. After a few minutes of walking, they reached a small clearing where an old wooden boat was hidden among bushes. "This boat belonged to my father. With it, we can go downriver to the big city, where I have friends who could help us." Vittoria immediately understood what he was suggesting. "You want us to run away together?" Ubirajara held her hands gently. "I want to give you a choice, Vittoria. We can leave tonight, leave this dispute behind, and build a life far from here. Or we can stay and face Geronimo together, as part of this community. The sun had completely disappeared, leaving only a purple trail on the horizon. In the sky, the crescent moon shone like an unfinished promise. Vittoria looked at the boat, at the river stretching like a silver path in the darkness, at Ubirajara's hands still holding hers. She thought of Hasi, of grandmother Irasima, of the women who had taught her to weave. She thought of the Torre dance and the feeling of belonging she had experienced for the first time in her life. Then, with a clarity that surprised her, she knew exactly what she needed to do. "I won't run," she said, her voice firm despite the fear she still felt. "But I won't surrender either. There is a third option, Ubirajara, and that's what we should bet on." The night passed in silent preparations. Under the light of oil lamps, the entire village worked with concentrated determination. The children were gathered in the most remote house, protected by some of the strongest young men. The elderly prepared traditional medicines in case they were wounded. The men sharpened spears and bows, not to attack but as a last resort for defense. And the women, led by grandmother Irasima, finished weaving the ceremonial mantle that would normally take days to complete. Vittoria worked among them, her fingers moving with growing confidence among the threads. Jasi had insisted on staying awake, helping in her way, bringing water to the weavers, singing little songs she had learned, occasionally falling asleep and waking again with renewed energy. When the fabric was finally ready, shortly before the first light of dawn, grandmother Irasima asked all the women to form a circle. In the center, she placed a basin with river water and medicinal plants. "Now," she said, looking directly at Vittoria, "it is time for your rebirth." With careful movements, the elder began to wash Vittoria's face, removing all the accumulated dust and sweat. Other women untied her braids, combing her hair with wooden combs, interweaving small beads and colorful feathers in the dark strands. Her arms and legs were painted with natural pigments, geometric designs that told stories of courage and transformation. Finally, the torn wedding dress, which Vittoria still kept as a reminder of her humiliation, was removed, and in its place, the newly woven ceremonial mantle wrapped her body like a protective embrace. "From today," proclaimed grandmother Irasima, "you are Iandara, she who shines like the day. Your past no longer imprisons you." When the sun finally rose on the horizon, Ubirajara came to get Vittoria, now Iandara. He too was transformed, his body painted for war, but his eyes remained gentle. "They are coming," he said simply. "Are you ready?" She nodded, feeling a surprising calm. The fear was still there, but now it was just a small part of something much greater. Together they walked to the entrance of the village, where the Council of Elders was already waiting. Around them, the entire Fulnio community gathered in. Solemn silence. It wasn't long before the group led by Geronimo appeared on the trail leading to the village. There were more than 20 men, as the lookouts had reported, all armed with machetes, clubs, and some shotguns. Geronimo came at the front, mounted on a black horse that nervously pranced. Beside him, surprisingly, was Seu Antonio, Vittoria's father, looking aged and dejected. When the group stopped about 20 meters from the village entrance, grandmother Irasima stepped forward. "This is Fulnio land," she said in a clear, strong voice despite her advanced age. "You were not invited." Geronimo spat on the ground with disdain. "I've come to claim what is rightfully mine. Vittoria, Antonio's daughter, is my wife before. God and the law, hand her over now and no one will get hurt." Seu Antonio looked uncomfortable beside the landowner, his eyes anxiously scanning the faces of the indigenous people, looking for his daughter. It was then that Iandara stepped forward, placing herself beside grandmother Irasima. With the ceremonial mantle and body paintings, she was almost unrecognizable. No longer the frightened young woman who had fled on her wedding night, but a woman of imposing presence. "My name is Iandara," she declared, her voice resonating clearly in the morning silence. "Vittoria no longer exists." Geronimo narrowed his eyes, confusion and anger competing for space on his wrinkled face. "What nonsense is this? Take those ridiculous paintings off her and bring her here." He made a move to dismount from his horse, but stopped when he saw Ubirajara and other Fulnio warriors step forward, forming a protective barrier. Seu Antonio looked at his daughter with a mixture of astonishment and sadness. "Daughter," he finally said, "what have they done to you?" Iandara felt a lump in her throat but maintained her composure. "No one did anything to me, father. For the first time I decided my own path." She paused, seeking the right words. "I am living among the Fulni-O by my own choice. I found respect and dignity here, things I never had in our home." The words hit Seu Antonio like physical blows. He aged 10 years before everyone's eyes. "Your mother cries every night," he said softly. "Your brother Tiago keeps asking when his sister will return to tell stories." Before Iandara could respond, Geronimo lost his patience. "Enough of this idle talk. Either she comes with me now, or we burn this village to the ground." He made a gesture and his men began to spread out, taking attack positions. It was at this moment that Grandmother Irasema raised her hands to the sky and began to sing, an ancient melody in Yathe that spoke of ancestors and protection. Other Fulni-O joined her, their voices rising in harmony. The singing seemed to disconcert the invaders, who exchanged uncertain glances. Taking advantage of the moment, Iandara stepped forward again. "There will be no bloodshed today," she said firmly. "Geronimo Bezerra, you have no right over me. Our marriage was not consummated, as you yourself declared that night. Before witnesses, you rejected me and sent me back, breaking any contract that might have existed." She pointed to her father. "Ask him. The law you mention so much says a marriage can be annulled under these conditions." Geronimo paled slightly, but his arrogance soon returned. "Even so, you are an unmarried woman. You should return to your father's house, not live among savages." Iandara smiled for the first time, a smile that carried not malice, but a quiet certainty. "That is no longer true either." She extended her hand, and Ubirajara came to her side, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Last night, before the Council of Elders and the entire Fulni-O community, Ubirajara and I were united in matrimony, according to the traditions of these people, a marriage as valid as any other performed in this country." A murmur ran through both the group of invaders and some of the Fulni-O, who were not aware of this development. Geronimo seemed stunned, unable to find words to contest. It was Seu Antonio who broke the silence, slowly dismounting from his horse and walking a few steps toward his daughter. "Is this really what you want, daughter?" he asked, his voice laden with contained emotion. "To live far from your family, from your people?" Iandara felt tears in her eyes but didn't look away. "The Fulni-O are now my family too, father, and as for our people," she made an encompassing gesture indicating the village, "we are all Brazilians. The difference is that here I learned that my worth is not in who accepts me as a wife, but in who I am." It was at this moment that Yasi escaped from her caretaker's watch and ran to Iandara's side, clinging to her skirt with her small arm. "Stay with us, Iandara," said the girl, looking defiantly at the strangers. The image of the child with her incomplete arm, bravely protecting the newcomer, seemed to touch something deep in Seu Antonio. He looked at his daughter, at Ubirajara, at little Hatsi, and finally at the armed men around him. Something changed in his expression, a resolution that Iandara had never seen before. "Geronimo," he said, turning to the landowner, "this ends. Here, my daughter has made her choice, and I respect it." Geronimo stared at Seu Antonio with barely contained fury. "Have you gone mad, old man? I paid good money for her." The words, spoken in a moment of anger, revealed the true nature of the transaction. Several of the men accompanying him exchanged uncomfortable glances. "How much?" asked Seu Antonio, surprising everyone. "How much did you pay?" Geronimo hesitated, realizing too late his mistake. 3,000 cruceros, and the promise not to take your lands in the next drought," he finally answered with renewed arrogance. "Too high a price for what I received." Seu Antonio put his hand in his pocket and pulled out a small leather bag. "Here are 2,000 cruceros, all I could gather. It's all you'll get. As for my lands..." He looked at his daughter, a gleam of pride finally appearing in his tired eyes. "I'd rather lose them with dignity than keep them with shame." He threw the bag at Geronimo's feet. The landowner looked at the money, then at the group of Fulni-O who remained firm, united. In dignified silence, he realized that many of his own men no longer seemed willing to start a conflict. With a brusque gesture, he picked up the money bag. "You haven't heard the last of Geronimo Bezerra," he threatened, pulling his horse's reins with unnecessary force. "This land will be mine one day, with or without agreement." But his words now sounded empty, devoid of the power they once carried. While he and most of his men moved away, so Antonio remained, looking hesitantly at his daughter. "Your mother, she would like to see you," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "And Tiago keeps asking when his sister will return to tell stories." Iandara felt the gentle squeeze of Ubirajara's hand in hers, not restrictive, but comforting, a silent guarantee that whatever decision she made would be respected. "I will visit you soon," she promised, "and perhaps you can come visit us too. Meet my new family." The relief on Su Antonio's face was palpable. He made a movement, as if he wanted to embrace her, but stopped uncertain. It was Iandara who stepped forward, enveloping her father in an embrace that spoke of forgiveness and new beginnings. In the months that followed, many things changed. Iandara and Ubirajara built their house at the edge of the village, closer to the path that led to the town, a physical symbol of the bridge that now existed between the two worlds. Yasi practically moved in with them, filling the house with her contagious laughter and the straw dolls she now learned to make on her. Hone, Donna Maria, Iandara's mother, began to visit weekly, bringing corn cakes and taking back medicinal herbs and stories. Little Tiago came to live temporarily with his sister, learning the Yathe language with the same ease with which the Fulni-O children learned Portuguese in their classes with Ubirajara. As for Geronimo, his plans to expand his lands were frustrated when the story of the forced marriage and the attempted invasion of the reservation reached the ears of a young prosecutor in Recife through letters carefully written by Iandara. The investigation that followed revealed decades of abuses against poor families in the region and illegal appropriation of lands. On a summer afternoon, as the sun set, tinting the sky red and gold, Iandara sat with grandmother Iracema at the B village entrance. The elder, more fragile now but still vigorous in spirit, smiled as she watched the children playing, JC teaching Tiago and other little ones to make traps to catch butterflies without hurting them. "When you arrived here," said grandmother Iracema, her voice carrying the wisdom of decades, "I thought we were saving a broken young woman. Now I see that it was you who brought us healing." Iandara looked to where Ubirajara was talking with Su Antonio, the two men now united by a mutual respect that transcended their differences. She looked at her mother, who was learning from other Fulni-O women the art of pottery, her hands finally creating beauty instead of just work. She looked at Yasi, whose physical disability would never again be seen as a flaw, but as part of her special uniqueness. "No one heals alone," she replied, holding the elder's wrinkled hand between her own. "We need each other to remember who we truly are." When the first star appeared in the sky, a bonfire was lit in the center of the village. Around it, Fulni-O and visitors from the town gathered for the Torre, the sacred dance that now served, not only as a spiritual ritual, but as a celebration of a new form of coexistence. Iandara, with her ceremonial mantle and hair adorned with colorful feathers, danced beside Ubirajara, their bare feet marking on the earth the rhythm of a story that would continue far beyond them. The story of how a rejected young woman found strength not only to rise again, but to lift others with her. And as the dance continued under the starry sky, those who watched from afar could see not two separate communities, but a single humanity, united by the most powerful of bonds: the recognition of the dignity that exists in each person, regardless of their origin, history, or appearance. A lesson that, like the colorful beads in Iandara's hair, would shine for generations. If you were moved by this journey of transformation and rebirth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that cross boundaries and touch hearts. Leave your like and share in the comments which moment touched your soul the most. When Iandara found her strength, or when two communities learned to see